on the issue of cultism. I'm being joined on the news at 10 to discuss the activities of cultists in Nigeria today by a lecturer from the Department of Business Administration, University of Lagos. He's also a youth activist. I want to thank you so much indeed for coming on the news at 10 at this time. Indeed, he is Mr. Kenneth Ikenwa. Many thanks indeed for coming.
Thanks, Gimba.
The term cultism is more often than not associated to something that is really bad and evil. Is that what it is?
Basically, I don't think that's what it is. I think the problem even begins with the inability to give it a proper definition. We should look at cultism from two dimensions. One, it's a social response. Two, it's also an economic response. When cultism and cultists manifest themselves as gangsters, it's a kind of social response. Now, but when they manifest themselves trying to survive, it's a kind of survival strategy. There seems to be a disconnect between what I have, what I can get, and what society is offering me. So when there's a social strain, you find people resorting to cultism to try to survive, to try to get access to resources that are not there. So if we give it the proper definition, we can address the problem. At first, we see it as a social response, and secondly, it's also an economic response. Gangsterism, a couple of youths coming together, youthful exuberance, youthful restivism, that's fine. From the economic perspective, you see people wanting to be a part of the country, hoping and feeling that I've gotten to school, I'm in society, there's so many people out there that are having so much society, I don't have anything, how do I fight back? Most of them resort to cultism. So that should be an appropriate, those should be appropriate dimensions for looking at the subject matter, cultism.
There are concerns, though, from two states, as a matter of fact, Delta State and Kwara State, and seeing the governors looking at this as a very troubling situation, and they're really concerned about it. How has this affected the understanding of what cultism is, especially when you get to schools, university, tertiary institutions, and then you have all these clashes between cult members? How do we address this?
Fine. Cultism, like I said, we should just start from the point of view that it's a response. And there are certain variables that are responsible for why we have this as a major problem in our society. One, the values in our society is eroded, all right? I grew up in school, in primary school, you listen to people talk about moral education, civic education, those things are gone. So we don't even know what the right values are. A young boy comes into school, he wants to write a big gap. Those are loss of values. Then two, you find out that the unemployment rate itself, it exacerbates the problem of cultism. When people are not sure, all right, that they're going to get this, if they have this resource, if they have this level of education, then they begin to get identified with people that are promising them much. So that's one. Then, can I go on? Then you also have the problem of cultural dissonance and diffusion. There's so much that has been diffused into the Nigerian culture, and there's so much that we don't even teach the young ones coming up anymore. So there seems to be a problem, all right? If this is the culture, if this is what I'm seeing on TV vis-a-vis what my parents have taught me, vis-a-vis what society is talking about, there would be a dissonance. Then there's also the absence, all right, of institutional emphasis. The institutions in the country have failed. You look at the family institution, you look at the educational institutions. When these institutions have failed, they have become bankrupt.
So how do we reverse the trend?
We must go back to the basics. We should start by teaching children in primary school the values of our society. We should start by teaching them going back to civic education, going back to moral education, going back to moral instructions. That's one. Then secondly, the culture. We must emphasize a culture of hard work, a culture of uprightness, a culture of focus. You don't promise people things that you can't deliver. And thirdly, the institutions must be rejigged. If the family is not doing well, if the educational institution is not doing well, the government should be able to pay attention to that. Then the issue of unemployment is a macroeconomic issue. You find out that if the unemployment rate can go down and the underemployment rate can go down in Nigeria, there is a likelihood, I'm hypothesizing now, there is a likelihood that the incidence of cultism could be abated.
Interesting. Many thanks indeed for talking to us, Mr. Kenneth Ikenwa, a lecturer from the Department of Business Administration, University of Lagos, for talking to us on this very topical issue. Many thanks indeed.
Thanks for having me on.